Arguably, not just the biggest talker in the world of entertainment, but breaking out of the entertainment beat into the world of politics. The suspension of late night host Jimmy Kimmel by ABC following remarks that he made about the assassination of Charlie Kirk during his Monday night monologue. We're going to head over to our friends at TMZ, Mr. Michael Babcock. Always love chatting with you, Michael. Thank you for taking the time, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, Jake, anytime. Thank you for having me.
Of course. For people, I've seen a lot of people commenting on the story and then adding the line in, well, I'm not entirely sure what he said, but. So before we get into this conversation, can we just clarify exactly what it was that Kimmel said on his show?
Absolutely. And I think people have probably incorrectly described it as comments about Charlie Kirk. Really what it was about was, and like you said, this was Monday night during the monologue. What the comments were really about was, one, the assassin's motives, the Charlie Kirk assassin's motives, and Donald Trump's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. So those were the two main points and the controversial points that Jimmy Kimmel made on Monday during the show. There was almost immediate backlash Monday night, Tuesday morning, over a lot of people that were talking about it, and to include the President of the United States and the Commissioner of the FCC. Now, there was seemingly pressure put on ABC, and obviously we have known what action they took. But yeah, that's what the comments were. So not even necessarily about Charlie Kirk's death, but about, again, the reaction and the motive.
And I think that clarification is really important. I know the story broke yesterday afternoon. It doesn't really seem like there have been a ton of developments. Obviously, there have been, reactions out of Hollywood and the unions.
Yeah.
Is there any indicator one way or the other whether this is a temporary suspension or whether or not the show is going to be canceled? Because didn't he just recently re-up his contract?
Yeah. There is no indication from ABC, but I think, and just reading between the lines a little bit here, and having talked to some people who are familiar with Jimmy's thinking after this move, it would be hard for me right now, at least, to imagine him being back on those airwaves. I think there is an enormous fracture in the relationship between the network executives and Jimmy Kimmel. And again, it's really hard for me to imagine him being back on that show at any point. So while not technically fired, and while the show has not been canceled, it's just an indefinite suspension, which of course could mean he theoretically would be back tomorrow or next week. I don't think that's going to happen. It's tough for me to imagine.
Now, obviously, neither of us know the details of his contract, but in a situation like this, will Disney try to find reason to not pay him out? I mean, if he just signed a multi-year contract, that's a lot of money that's up in the air right now. Right. Is it a situation where Kimmel would be paid out through his contract, or do you think ABC would try to use this as cause as a way to get out of it?
That's a great question. That's a great point. I am sure, because like you said, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel makes an enormous amount of money. That's one of the controversies in the conversation surrounding these late night shows and whether or not they do continue or not. The ratings not necessarily there anymore, but the paychecks really certainly are. So I am sure they would love to be able to say, hey, we're letting you go, Jimmy, with cause. You made these comments. They were not just inappropriate, but they were inaccurate. And maybe there is a way for them to at least try to get out of what will surely be tens of millions of dollars in contract money. Obviously, Jimmy Kimmel's not, I can say for a fact, is not going to just sit back and allow that to happen without fighting back. So we may be headed ultimately for a battle in court here. That might be where this likely ends up.
Yeah, it's most definitely not going to be a story that's wrapping up anytime soon. No. It does not, I think, surprise either of us that there has been a lot of reaction out of Hollywood, most of it in support of Jimmy Kimmel. But there's also been reaction out of the unions, out of SAG-AFTRA and out of the Writers Union, of which I'd imagine Jimmy Kimmel is actually probably a part of both.
Yes.
It's one thing to have Gene Smart post on Instagram in your favor. It's another thing to have the unions come out on your behalf. Yeah. Is there any power to be had from the unions supporting Jimmy Kimmel? Can he get behind them? Would they stand up on his behalf, or is it just kind of a shake of the fist in solidarity?
Yeah, I think probably more of a shake of the fist. I don't know that in this situation that the union has any sort of power to force ABC or to cause them to change course, reverse course here. I think it's more just letting everybody know where they stand and that they have expressed displeasure here. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think you can have people who listen to the comments from Monday night and say, I don't like that. I think it was inappropriate the way he characterized the shooter's motives are incorrect. But I also think that we've got to be cognizant that this is a slippery slope. And even if you agree with the administration now and you say, okay, I'm on board with them, I'm aligned with them, there will be a next administration and one after that. And I think anyone, especially if you talk for a living, it's impossible to not be a little bit concerned, I think, after something like this happens, because, it's the First Amendment for a reason, right? And we want to make sure we maintain our free speech. So it's a tricky issue. It's a polarizing issue. And I don't think this is something that's going away anytime soon, like you said.
Michael, you mentioned this being a tricky issue. And just to give some kind of behind the scenes perspective to our viewers, we don't have like a teleprompter here on Chicago Live. It's just you and I talking. Yeah. And throughout the morning, we've been talking about this topic alongside myself and my co-anchors on the show. And I think everyone is just being so particularly careful in their word choice of how they're going about describing the events of what happened leading up to the suspension of Kimmel. Just, you mentioned anyone who talks for a living, which obviously you and I do. Yeah. What is the vibe over at TMZ? Is it just because right now there is such a walking on eggshells and making sure you don't say the wrong thing and making sure nothing that you say could be misconstrued on social media. How are you guys feeling right now?
Yeah, people in our newsroom, I think that's a great question. And I had never heard anything like this said before. And I've been doing this here now for almost 12 years. They said, I heard for the first time today, people say that they were scared. They were watching their words and they were frightened about what could potentially happen depending on what they said. So it's, again, I've never experienced that. We've covered a lot of stories, controversial stuff, not controversial stuff. First time I'd ever heard anything said like that today.
We talked a lot about reactions out of Hollywood, which there have been plenty. There are a lot of reactions from the unions. Correct me if I'm wrong. One reaction we have not gotten is from Kimmel himself. Is that correct?
That's right. All we've got, the only kind of semblance of anything is Jimmy kind of rushing into his car last night and did not say anything. But there are reports out there, and I've also heard from somebody who knows him that, not very happy at all. Furious, as a matter of fact, at the decision.
President Trump had said, he praised ABC for, I believe the quote was, having the courage to do the right thing. But then, correct me if I'm wrong, he also name-dropped Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon as being the next to go. What does this mean for the future of late night? And is this you mentioned this administration, but yes, other administrations will come. Is this a temporary halt in sort of what has been a staple of television history? Yeah. Or are we actually looking at the end of late night television as we know it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I wish I had the answer to that. Obviously now he wanted Stephen Colbert gone. Colbert is gone. Kimmel probably gone, at least for the time being he is. And he has President Trump made it clear that he is going out or wants those two other guys gone. And does he put his finger on the scale there, and does he try and make that happen? I could see the industry late night regulating a little bit, and perhaps it comes a little bit back towards the center, which I think it's probably aired a little to the left here, obviously, or I could see those guys gone. And I think those are the two possibilities here. It doesn't seem sustainable that we continue like we are right now. I just don't see how it works. So something's going to have to give. What is it going to be? Are those guys going to be out, or does a late night change as a whole and go back to a little bit like it used to be with the Leno and Letterman days and even before?
Well, what it is going to be is, at least for some of the shows on air tonight, I feel like all of us are going to be watching what Colbert says, what Meyer says, what Fallon says. Absolutely. I mean, do you expect those guys to go out in support of Kimmel on their shows tonight? Or Colbert's got nothing to lose. I mean, he'll go out there, So what do you expect the other guys to do?
Great point. Yeah, I think Colbert, I would be shocked if he didn't say anything. It'll be interesting to see the other two guys, Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon. Are they feeling the pressure? If they don't say anything, maybe that perhaps indicates that they are. And maybe they say, hey, I'm feeling the pressure. I don't care, and I'm going to speak my mind. That wouldn't shock me either. I think tonight, you're going to have a lot of people tuning into late night TV. Maybe people who hadn't been watching, they probably do tune in tonight.
Michael, I don't ask this question to imply anything, but it doesn't change the fact that the Nexstar stations, the ABC stations, were the ones that initially started the sort of this precedent of we're not going to air Kimmel. And Nexstar, correct me if I'm wrong, is in the midst of a merger. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And is that
and the FCC needs to sign off on it?
Exactly. It is a merger that needs to be signed off by the FCC. And is that at all similar to the Paramount merger that was going on while Colbert was being why Colbert ended up being fired?
Yeah, I think you could definitely draw a parallel there. The reality is you're talking about big mergers that need the FCC sign off. And, Brendan Carr is in charge of the FCC and he works for Donald Trump. And I think absolutely, there's a parallel to be made there. There are similarities. And I know a lot of people have looked at that and they have said that was the kind of the leverage that the administration had, and that's why they could get ABC then to do what they wanted them to ultimately do. I think that matters so much. If ABC just said, I don't like Jimmy's comments and the ratings are not great and we're going to move on, I think that's their prerogative. I think if the government starts getting involved, that might be where you're seeing a line cross. So that's the big question.
But the ratings conversation is such an interesting one because I've seen a lot of people who I've never heard talk about ratings ever bring up ratings today. But correct me if I'm wrong, the general perspective of ratings has changed. Like how the way people watch late night, very few people watch it live on the air. Right. It's viral videos, it's YouTube, it's TikTok. I mean, necessarily throwing out the linear ratings from overnight, is that as much of an argument as people seem to think it is?
No, I don't think it is. And you can it's not just late night. I mean, there are other forms of entertainment now. We've all got our phones and we know that's changed things. So you can compare Johnny Carson's ratings to Jimmy Kimmel if you want to, but they're not going to look anything alike. So yes, I think that is probably unfair to just look at the ratings. Does late night as a whole have the impact that it used to have? No, it doesn't. But that's just the reality, and that's nothing new. You've mentioned the contract that Jimmy might have gotten recently. ABC obviously couldn't have been too unhappy with him if they had extended him. So yeah, it's such a complicated issue, and the First Amendment here, I think, in many ways is on the line.
Very, very much. I feel like we're just turning the first page of what this is going to be a multi-chapter story. I mean, it's not even the first page because Colbert was a part of this a couple of weeks back. Michael Babcock, TMZ. Thank you for an amazing conversation, man. I always love chatting with you, and I know you guys got a lot going on today, so thank you for your time.